Hello, welcome to Resident Evil Outbreak. I am the Darken Rose and I'm going to be providing the commentary for this very hard full game speedrun. Now, this is actually an online run that's for 4 players, but myself and Hurricane Chris actually adjusted the routing so that it can work with 2 people. This is usually a 55 minutes to an hour run, real time, probably an hour and 5-10 minutes. And we're actually going to be starting out with BFP. There are 5 scenarios in this game for full game. And we actually start on the second one because of the fact that as soon as you start up the game does randomize. But the first scenario that you play online usually has a set item set when you begin the game. So we want to actually play this scenario for the sake of one portion that's coming up that I'll explain in a moment. But if you notice the setting, it's actually very familiar with the original Resident Evil games, notably RE2 with the Umbrella Lab, which is what this location is. There's going to be a lot of locales in Outbreak that are pretty much just based off of the original games, and a lot more areas that expand upon the whole city of Raccoon City. This is a game that takes place during the Raccoon City outbreak, and you play as just a group of random survivors just trying to make it out.
Find anything?
And so the characters that we're playing as, one of them is actually an Umbrella member, but I'll talk about that in a moment. But we're actually playing types of 2 characters. Chris is playing a Yoko type character known as Amelia, who you usually see as a zombie. She's pretty much the best character for Yoko types. Yoko types have extra inventory space and can actually scurry away as their dodge. I'm playing as a Kevin type who is known as Carl.
Yes.
I believe this is a File 3 character, but that's some lore stuff that I'll bring up later. And Kevin types usually have a 45 that you'll see me pull out here, and an ability that will be very useful for 2 scenarios called rolling pot shots, but I won't go into those until we get to those scenarios. Now, there's just a lot of bashing right now in the beginning of this. We're trying to open up a valve handle door so that we can get downstairs. Now, I said we wanted to start this scenario first for a reason, and it's because when you go through the ventilation shaft in the beginning on that staircase that we just went through, if you do not reset your game and just start off after playing a round or 2, spawn points with that ventilation shaft get changed every time. So if you start out on the first item set, the first set of spawns that you get with the ventilation shaft has us come up here. And for the sake of, getting the valve handle quick and, being able to run and grab the next objective, which is 2 sets of chemicals to combine, it's way more preferable to do it that way. Now, this is going to be the first set of moments where myself and Chris will be separated doing our own tasks. I did say this is a gesture file for 2 people, so there's going to be a lot of this. It's very coordinated. We try our best not to step on each other's toes because, unfortunately, due to the nature of this game with its online aspect of it, there is something called Room Master and Door Lag.
Yes.
When you are the first person that enters a room, or if the game just for some reason gives it to you out of nowhere, even if there's multiple people in the room, you're considered the Room Master. The Room Master gets the lowest amount of lag in the room, the most consistency with where all the enemies are and who hits who. And unfortunately, if you're a host, which this also has an impact on Room Master too, you introduce a door/item lag for people, in which when you go through a door, like I'm doing right now, if Chris were to pick up an item at that moment, he would actually be paused in place until I go through the door, and then it will finally let him grab the item. So we try our best not to do that to each other because there will be moments where it's very crucial to get our timings down right on picking up items.
Have a look.
Alright, now we're actually in the duct where a very familiar enemy lies, Plant 42. We actually had to mix some chemicals so that we can kind of, what's the word? Ungrow it, I guess. It kind of blocks you out from using the ladder, so you kind of have to give it some I guess give it some weed killer. And now that I have the moment to say it, there is some story to these scenarios. The character that we are seeing in the 70s cutscenes is Monica. That's her name. And Amelia, who's actually just Yoko, but just, you know, a different character. Yoko is actually a former Umbrella member that actually ends up with amnesia due to some circumstances. But she still remembers some shred of what she did in the Umbrella Lab. She also took part in the T-virus experiments and whatnot. So she does have some blood on her hands. But there's a lot of unique dialogue that plays through these scenarios, in which, you know, there'll be different conversations with the characters depending on who you play as, because there's Mark, George, Cindy, Kevin, Yoko, Jim. There is an Alyssa, and there's multiple characters that can each have their own sets of conversations depending on the circumstances and the location that they're in and who is around who. It's pretty interesting in that regard. There's a lot of dialogue that barely scratches the surface of the storytelling that goes on. But alright, one benefit too of having Yoko in this scenario is that since she is an Umbrella member, she does have fingerprints, which Chris just inputted in, and now we're going to be separated once more. Now, I guess I could get into the next portion of the run, which is where there'll be times where you might not see a timer, but there is something counting down in the background. And I just picked up a blowtorch. The problem with this laboratory right now is that it's frozen. And we kind of need to get the temperature back up to normal. So we're going to go into the low temperature room where the that little animation is whenever you get the I forgot what it was, but it's from the original with a little crane machine. And now we're going to blowtorch this guy's hand off, and now Chris is actually going to be waiting in the duct for a moment. There's a timer right now that is happening, and meanwhile I'm going to be running through doors and whatnot. Chris is going to be staying out in the duct, and the reason for that is because any timer in this game, it does not work in real time. It works in game time. So every time you go through a door load, you're actually losing time in the process. But you can offset this if you have another person with you, because they can just stay in one room and just wait out the timer for you. So their timer is going to be the one you rely upon. So I'm just trying my best here to run real quick to get to the train car that's right here. Meanwhile, I'm actually grabbing supplies and stuff for Chris, and he's also kind of grabbing some supplies for me too while we're running around. Because the boss fight that happens in this scenario, it takes a good deal of coordination, and pretty much the supplies that we have would be just enough to get the job done. So the audio is now switched over to Chris because the one thing I'm going to be doing is just waiting on him. So now the roles are reversed. I'm going to be waiting in this train car room while Chris goes and gets the shotgun. We need the shotgun for the boss fight. And one important fact about the shotgun, particularly with people that run slower in this game, because there are over 80-90 characters in this game that you can play as. And every character has their own set of stats, their own set of speed, their own health pool, which has RNG tied to it, by the way, as to whether or not you get a good amount of health or not. Attack damage, and also infection rate, which is exclusive to this game only, which I will break that down in a moment. But to finish what I was saying, if you have a shotgun or the assault rifle, for some reason with slower moving characters, their speed actually increases with it. Pretty much close, if not to the full speed that you can have on a regular basis, depending on the character you play as. So Amelia right now, she's actually running much faster than she should be. And depending on which character you play as when their running speed, the more drastic the effect is. So, okay, since I'm done with that, to bring up the crazy amount of characters in this game, we do only play a few of the characters in this game, but each character has their own uses. I already mentioned what Yoko and Kevin have, but the other characters that we play as, I'll bring those up. Mark, he's actually more of a tank kind of guy. He usually has enough damage, he usually has a good deal of damage percentages when it comes to his character types, especially the one that I'll be playing in the next scenario, the Hive. But he can actually block attacks, actually block them, and he does have a charged up attack for melee moves. That's only exclusive to him. Jim can actually flip a coin that increases crit chance in this file up to 45%. And alongside that, play dead, which literally flop over and play dead. That's one of his movesets. And you can use that to kind of just wait for the zombies to move away. You know, they don't really bother you when they do that. Alyssa, she actually has a lockpick that picks doors that are locked. So there are actually some doors you can lockpick in this game that you do not need a key for. It's pretty cool. And with George, George and Cindy are basically the healers. George actually has a sort of chemical setup that he has in his inventory that you can combine herbs to create pills with that have different effects, like antidotes, healing items, large healing items. You can pretty much make a lot of stuff with this chemical set. And Cindy, she has 3 of each herb starting out in a herb case, and she can combine herbs, and her effects on the herbs are actually a bit more potent.
Yeah?
But she's pretty much the resident healer of the group. Alright, now that I'm done explaining the characters, we're going to now get into the boss fight of BFP, Below Freezing Point, in which there's this weird little alien thing that just suddenly becomes this big monstrosity, and now we're just going to be pouring rounds into him. So, Chris has a shotgun, I'm throwing bottles at him. And this part is very, very scary because there will be moments where he'll drop little guys like you see right now. If you let him drop a lot of those little guys, it can very easily get messy, this run. You can have a great run right here, and this boss fight, for RNG's sake, just have it go very badly. Because either, one, his animation kind of just took a moment and he just swung at the worst time before you could stun him again. Or a lot of those little guys spawn in and they just start leaping onto you, and then it's kind of like a setup for him to just swipe you. If he swipes you, you get knocked down and you lose seconds. So that fight was the most ideal version of the fight that you can have, especially with 2 people. Actually, I think that was a PB, if I remember correctly, for that scenario. And now that we're done with Below Freezing Point, which... you know, just to say one more time, that was the Umbrella Lab from RE2. The original, not Nest. And now we're going to be moving on into another familiar location, this time from Resident Evil 3. And this scenario is actually called the Hive, with the hospital from Resident Evil 3. This one has a pretty cool mechanic, well, at first, until you start speedrunning it, but in terms of regular play, this scenario is actually kind of cool because of the fact that there is a sort of lurking enemy that pursues you in this scenario, in which either, you know, either you can become him if you die, or he can put you into bleed, which is also another unique mechanic to Outbreak. We'll go into more detail on that soon, but let's just say that this guy that we're about to meet, unfortunately, is going to have a pretty bad demise soon.
I apologize if I surprised you. Please.
Unfortunately, you can't skip this scene, but
I must say that this hospital is
if you also happen to notice at the sink, there's like 5 or 6 toothbrushes, and I'm kind of wondering who needs all those toothbrushes, because I just can't help but see that. I just think about that every time. Alright, so he pretty much tells us the hospital's actually not safe after all. Might as well escape from here. But the problem is, there's a bunch of zombies outside, so going out through the front would be suicide. We have to find another way out. Now, since we don't actually read documents and stuff, which, by the way, there's a lot of memos and documents you can pick up in these scenarios that give you more of a idea of what happened during whoever's perspective was, because there's a lot of memos and notes that tell you about the lives of whoever it was that wrote it down, what they were doing at that moment when the outbreak was starting. There's a lot of very interesting facts here. But okay, cutscene went by. That zombie that gets up actually gives us an indicator of what's going to happen next with this elevator. This elevator has a likelihood of a zombie being in there if that zombie in the room I was just in doesn't get up. Since the zombie got up though, the zombie doesn't appear in the elevator. Now, here comes another run-killing portion in which, you know, I mean, it's not really a run killer, but if it does go bad, it does kill the run. I have to run in here very quickly and input a code. Now, I didn't mention this yet, especially since it's not really something that you notice in the first scenario due to the item set being usually set. But every scenario has multiple puzzle/codes that you can put in, or code, solutions. Sometimes, depending on the puzzle, you might have to do a bit more than what you might have to do. And then with codes, you might have a really great code, or you might have the worst code. Fortunately, though, we actually had the second best code, 5315, for this one. 8211 is actually the best code for this. And the worst one, which is a meme for myself and Chris, 555, which that one just takes a lot more inputs, wastes more time. And just now, with the code entry, the Leechman actually popped into the room, which is our lurking enemy for this scenario. If you die to the Leechman, you will also become a Leechman, and that will also pursue your friends, whoever is left around. And Leechman is a very scary enemy in this. He popped into the room with the code inputting just early, but I got very lucky and he actually did not immediately zone in on me. That actually could have been a run killer, just because he didn't attack me though. Very lucky that it did not end there. But now Chris is going to be running through a hall. He has to grab a key for a boat in the sewer that we're going to have to go into soon. And meanwhile, I have to wait on Leechman to come into this room. Since Leechman can't go into the room Chris is in, there's a chance that he'll pop into my room. And there'll be moments where he'll either come in very quickly or come in very slowly. And there's actually a very small chance that he could also just not spawn in entirely. But the Leechman just, when it comes to the RNG of Leechman, this portion right here, just me waiting in the temperature room, could honestly make the difference as to whether or not this would be a good run. Because he can take so long that Chris actually has more than enough time to get down to the basement floor that I'm on, B2. And because we're not meeting up, I haven't opened the door yet with the key card, that would lose a lot of time. But Leechman got there soon enough. Usually we try to have him come in before Chris gets that key to the padlock. And that gives me just enough time to run in and open up the door. But since it took a little too long, I actually can't grab the first aid spray that he needs. It's sort of like a marathon safe strat that we do sometimes. Especially since this is a pretty lengthy run and so much can go wrong with it. That honestly, it's almost a necessity to have it. Now, this boss fight is very scary. Chris is going to be doing a strat here called rolling pot shots, like I mentioned earlier. And it involves him setting it up properly. So you'll see Kevin raise his gun up as if he's readying his aim. And this is going to be where he starts his pot shots. If you actually alternate D-pad left and right as you're doing the pot shots, the crit damage from those pot shots remains, so you can actually still get a lot of damage in on them. So this fight too, you kind of have to take a bit of your time because unfortunately, since it's online, the laggy nature of this game kind of comes into full effect here with this boss. This boss has some weird iframes, and sometimes you just have to really take your time on this guy. Okay, Chris just finished shooting. I have to actually finish him off. Unfortunately, the boss ate a bullet with its iframe, so I kind of had to go in and finish him off. Thankfully this time though, considering how this run usually goes with this scenario, Chris is actually not in danger. And we could just proceed onwards. And that's going to be the end of this scenario for the Hive. Now, I didn't even get to mention it because unfortunately this run, like me commentating over it, this is Oh, there's a lot going on that I have to break down here, but story-wise, it's very strange to see a sewer like this, but for some reason, there is a portion of the sewers at the very bottom of the hospital that leads out, that leads back out, so pretty much that was the way that the survivors in the game end up having to escape through. Unfortunately, the doctor doesn't survive. He actually becomes a leech man, which is the leech man we just took care of in the temperature room. He had the key card, so unfortunately, we kind of had to do that to him. But now that that's over, we're now heading on to the third scenario, or quote-unquote, actually, quote-unquote, the third scenario. We're going back to the first scenario of Outbreak, which is called Outbreak. And this is the level where the Raccoon City Outbreak actually begins. This is where you actually see, in terms of regular play, not speedrunning, where you could see people like civilians just running away and fleeing for their lives, because this is when it really starts to hit the outbreak. There's actually a really cool CG intro too for this game that if I had the chance to, I would love to show, because it is undoubtedly one of the best interpretations as to how the T-virus spread. It is so well done in that regard. And you get a little hint of Birkin, which actually Birkin does not appear at all in this game, or File 2, which is the sequel for this one. But there is an actual in-game model that's not used of Birkin, interestingly enough. There is a lot of cut content for these games, unfortunately, due to how the fact that after File 2, the game didn't sell well enough, and the rest of the scenarios that were planned out and were being worked on just did not make it to the light of day. But there was actually supposed to be more than 10 scenarios, which File 2 has 5, this one has 5. There's actually supposed to be 15 or 20, but unfortunately, due to the fact that this is the PS2, and they kind of had to separate the scenarios, it kind of led to that sort of thing happening. Now, Outbreak, the setup right now is I am a Kevin type still. He's Raymond, which is actually a character in this scenario that you see soon. And Chris is an Alyssa type known as Rita. She's actually a character in Desperate Times in File 2, but you could play as her here too. There's a lot of NPC characters you can play as. But yeah, Alyssa has the lockpick, which you can see right now, just going to work on it. Funny enough, there is a certain rhythm to all the attacks, even gunfire and picking the lock, that you do not really notice, but it is there. Depending on how fast you hit it, you could actually make things worse on yourself just by rapidly pressing it. If you follow a rhythm to attacking, that is actually the way you can do the fastest attack rate for your character. Now, we're going to do another strat here. It's very, it's not hard, but it's actually pretty easy to screw up, called the shutter strat. Now, the cutscene started here, so Chris is going to have to hit him one more time, but let's see here. There we go. And one fact about zombies in this game is that they can break open doors a lot better than player characters can. So this shutter, normally you would need a lot of ammunition or just a lot of time to break it open. But if you have the zombie breaking it open with you, it does take a lot less resources to get it done. And we just got it open. Now we're just gonna be careful with the zombie. It's being a little weird. Unfortunately, as you can see with the lag, it's kind of hard to tell like who exactly, like where exactly the zombie is until it actually applies for the other person. But now that we made it out of there, in time, by the way, there is a bit of a quote-unquote timer for that, because if you take too long, a horde of zombies will push up to that room, and it does get very messy if you do not get out of there quick enough. But now we're on the rooftop, and the birds are, well, one of the worst enemies in this game. There is a moment coming right up where you could potentially die instantaneously due to these birds. There is a few moments in Outbreak, both in File 1 and 2, where you can get insta-killed, probably because of an enemy or because of a action that can get you killed if you get interrupted. So you kind of have to jump this ledge, and there is a timing to making the ledge. So, for safety's sake, I actually stuck around just so that in case Chris ended up not catching the ledge, I can just, you know, hoist him up. But Chris made it. We're good. We're gonna move on. If you actually miss the ledge, you will get into an animation where you have to pull yourself up, and if you are not fast enough with those birds, they will peck you and you will fall to your death. And that'll be it for you. So that didn't happen, thankfully. We're just gonna keep rocking it and head back down to the street where they are rounding up survivors, the police, and sending them to safety. We're just gonna keep running here. The timer is not really much of a threat, fortunately. And as soon as you get to this portion of the area, you are safe. Even if someone pushes on. Okay, but now we're gonna get to one of the most interesting facts of Outbreak. We are playing this on very hard. Now, when you go from the first 3 difficulties to very hard actually changes some of these scenarios around in terms of what enemies are around. So normally here, if you play on any of the 3 difficulties that isn't very hard, there are zombies here. This enemy is called a scissor tail, and you really only see these enemies here and in File 2 with flashback. Now, the thing about these enemies is that in File 1, they're actually not that bad. File 2, on the other hand, they're actually a bit smarter. So, it's a good thing that they're just a bit dumb here, so that we deal with one of the most frustrating quote-unquote bosses of the game here, door boss. So, we got scissor tails after us. We kind of have to break this door open, and Raymond over there, the actual Raymond, not me Raymond, but, you know, Raymond that's shooting the door right now, he's going to continuously shoot at the door while the scissor tails are just focused on us.
This is it.
This sort of thing right here can just, it can either be the best thing in the world or the worst thing in the world, depending on what goes down. So, it kind of went to kind of being sort of the worst here, because this scissor tail here was just on the wall, and I don't want the scissor tail to be there, because if he gets in the way of Raymond, he just shoots the scissor tail. He just keeps trying to shoot the door, but since the scissor tail's in the way, he wastes shotgun shells killing it. So, Chris is playing the role of, I'm not going to say bait, but just, well, yeah, he's pretty much just baiting him, while I unload on the door. And honestly, this is probably very good. This is probably one of the best, actually, that we've had in regards to the scissor tails behaving properly. You can have the scissor tails just go after the guy shooting the door and not focus on the person trying to bait them. So, for this to happen, it was very good that we had it happen like this. So now, I believe we should be done getting through the door. And by the way, another great thing is that these cutscenes too also get tweaked to have the scissor tails in them, even the CG ones. So Capcom put a lot of work into actually showing the differences, even in cutscene, which is just scratching the surface of how much detail there is to these games. But before I gush on about it, we're gonna grab a lighter here, open up this fuel tank, and pretty much light them on fire. You don't really see the cutscene right there, but it is a CG scene where literally you see the scissor tails burning. If you don't have the scissor tails, it'll be the zombies, of course. But like I said, they actually made another scene just so that you can see the scissor tails also during that cutscene. All right.
Are you okay?
Now we're just.
You
It's pretty
okay?
straightforward here. Also some unique ad-libbing there.
I guess.
And now we're gonna actually go through the sewer here and just
what am I
climb
gonna
out.
do?
This is the most straightforward portion of Outbreak here. So, at this point in time, you've made it out, and there's actually a group of survivors here, and a police officer that's going to take you by car away from the most dangerous area right now. Right now, it's just portions of the city that are dealing with this before it really got out of hand. And there are, oh man, some of these scenarios actually have different endings to them. This one is one of them. There's going to be a situation soon that takes place in a cutscene. Unfortunately, we have to skip it due to the run, but there is technically a true ending to this scenario where there is a group of officers trying to blow up a whole street of zombies. Like, they set up explosives through a whole block, and there is so many zombies that they actually start getting overrun before they could finish setting up the detonator and whatnot. So you have the choice here of actually helping them and fixing the detonator and blowing up the zombies, which kind of leads to a really cool scene, to be honest, or running away and just leaving, which, I mean, it's the speedrun, so I mean, other as an incentive, we have to leave. So we're not even gonna go any more past the bridge. I'm just gonna turn around and run back to the van, and Chris is gonna be ready on the car prompt, and that's it for Outbreak. But it takes a little longer to do it, but if you want more to the story and whatnot, I would definitely recommend actually going through with the next portion of that scene, which is just going past the bridge, heading down, and helping out the officers. It's actually really cool, the cutscene you get. And one of the greatest things about Outbreak with the characters is that every scenario, in regards to them, like, you know, speaking to somebody, or it's a cutscene that involves their narration, they all have their own different narrations and their own different personalities when it comes to them. These are actual people. They have their own, you know, they have their own likes, dislikes. The thing too that isn't even touched upon in the speedrun is that if you play with AI, sort of, you actually can tell who is actually cool with who in regards to characters. If, for example, George is actually not fond of Yoko at all because of the fact that she was affiliated with Umbrella, he actually kind of somewhat feels disgusted for her for taking part in Umbrella's things. But if you actually help him out as Yoko, he actually starts to turn around and have unique dialogue that shows that he's turning around to Yoko. And there's just things like that here and there for all the characters, and it's something you don't really see in the speedrun, but I just had to elaborate on that. But alright, here we are with Hellfire. We are now at 2 scenarios left to go, and this one is honestly the easiest one. The only thing you really have to worry about here is getting grabbed and being put in bleed, which, if you do not know what bleed is, I guess I can finally talk about it 30 minutes into this. The bleed mechanic is the same thing as going into danger. If you go into danger, your character just starts limping and you are very slow. If you are put into bleed, not only does it have some sort of tangible benefit in the Hive just because of Leechman, he really likes bleeding characters. You kind of get put into bleed for a while, which has you kind of leaking out blood and limping, just like you would be in danger, and you do take more damage over time because of it. The bleed mechanic lasts for about 30 seconds, and it's kind of the one occasion where you have to be absolutely careful not to be alone in with zombies, because if you don't have a character that's very good at defense, you know, doesn't have a good defense mechanic, you kind of get put into a very bad situation with it. But alright, here we are, 2287, sort of. It's like the second best code, I'm assuming, I believe. I believe there's another one that literally just skips out a number on there, so you have less inputs overall. But here comes another portion where we're separated. Chris and I, unfortunately, due to the way that the RNG played out here, Chris and I are never gonna meet up here. So Chris is actually gonna be doing some puzzles right now, while I, meanwhile, just go for one certain puzzle for a gem that I have to grab. And this part right here, I mean, it's very straightforward. So honestly, this is something that you can just easily fill in with just talking more about the game, or just, you know, donations and whatnot. But now we're gonna proceed further through, and there are liquors in this scenario. I actually didn't even get to say that, but there are liquors here. And they're not as bad here as they would be in, say, like RE2R. Those are actually the most deadly I've ever seen. the liquors, but I'm gonna go and put this code for safe, JIA. The code for this room is actually in the burning room I was in that I had to drop down into, but it's there's a lot of pretty unique codes for that one. One of them is Bay, which kind of cracks me up a little bit. But now that I'm done with that, I have the silver key. I'm gonna go and move on. Chris actually is going to go into the same area because of the fact that he has to turn on the power for me. And that's really the only objective that the person that isn't Hunk B in this scenario does. That's the most important objective for them, is to get the power up and running before Hunk gets to the end. Which, by the way, oh yeah, we're playing as Hunk. Fan favorite, one of the fan favorites here.
Please help!
We're also going to be doing the pot shot strat again for this boss battle. But this one actually has a tendency to be a 1 cycle and then just a 2 cycle. Which is pretty cool in regards to that. But I also did not get to mention it, but and Chris didn't get to show it either, but there are moments where you can actually manipulate the enemies in regards to their behaviors when you run into certain portions of the hallways that you go through. That hallway I was running through with the zombie that Chris just passed, if you hug the left side of the wall and very quickly make that turn, you can actually avoid that zombie from grabbing you entirely and just keep running. There is more stuff like that in the Lone Wolf speedrun for this game, but Lone Wolf is another can of worms to go through, so I won't be going into that one. But Chris is now doing the power puzzle, which this is actually a puzzle that does crop up in the next scenario that we're gonna do, but it's actually more simplified here, just so that you can get acquainted with the mechanics. But Chris just got the power back on, so now all that's left is for me to get to the end and finish the boss fight. Jeez, this boss fight, it is probably the easiest one. It does take some practice to get this one down, but as soon as you get it down, you pretty much have the gist of it all. So this ladder right here had to be turned on by Chris turning on the power. He got the power on, so no time wasted here on waiting. I'm gonna climb down, and this is a little thing that I didn't get to mention in BFP, but there is quick dismounting on the ladders. It's like the last 2 or 3 steps of the ladder. If you just spam circle, you can actually climb off it early. And now I'm gonna hug the left side here so that this boss, which is known as the suspended, doesn't grab me. This is like a more humanized liquor, I guess you could say. And I'm just gonna be rolling pot shotting her. I didn't get the 1 cycle, unfortunately, but this is still a good one all around with the 2 cycle. And since all that gunfire was heard, the firefighter that actually was there at the very beginning of the scenario hears us out, so
it's not just
he actually helps us out and then gets us to escape.
The whole city is burning.
Another fun fact about this scenario is that there is basically like 50% of the game that I didn't even get to show in regards to how this scenario goes. There is a whole portion of the apartment block you do not even step foot into in this scenario during the speedrun. But if you do, there are tags that you can pick up, like firefighter ID tags you can pick up, and it does give you a little extra scene there at the end with him just talking about the guy that actually died at the beginning. His name was oh man, I forget his name, but it is a sort of like a little closure for that beginning scene, because you see the guy run away and escape while his friend literally just gets completely destroyed by what happens in that cutscene that we skip in the beginning. There are doors that there is a door that gets blown up before you enter, and it's the way that you actually come in through. So there's no way out at the beginning of Hellfire because of the explosion that happens. And one of the firefighters dies in that cutscene, but you don't see it at all since we have to skip it. And yeah, just picking up those tags gives some form of closure for that scene. Now that I'm done with Hellfire, we are now heading into Decisions, the final scenario of the game. This one has the most endings to the game, or to File 1. And it's mainly because of the fact that Capcom actually did a sort of unique twist to the endings here, and depending on who you pair up with in this scenario. And also another thing that will come into play very soon. Well, not very soon, but probably in the next 20 minutes, because this is a very lengthy portion of the run here. This is the one that takes the longest out of the bunch for 2 players, especially so with 2 players, because this is a pretty big location. This is the Raccoon University that we're going into, and it's a pretty big location. But the story for this one is that George, one of the characters of the team, gets a letter mysteriously from his colleague slash acquaintance Peter Jenkins. And what he doesn't realize is that Peter Jenkins actually helped out with the Umbrella Project too. But while he was, part of the team, he was actually secretly working on a cure for the T virus known as the Daylight.
Good.
So Peter Jenkins gets a letter out to George, which it somehow miraculously ends up in the RPD underground parking garage. Which, I mean, it's not really said to be that, but it pretty much is that location, because if you play File 2, you'll see that it's the same place in Desperate Times. So
Help me!
Chris gets a letter,
Please,
and
please help!
you kind of end up here now, and trying to figure out where
Alyssa.
Peter is,
Yeah.
at least for the beginning. Now,
Thank
I
you.
picked Cindy for this one because Cindy actually has 2 very important things for this scenario.
Yeah.
One, she actually can play the piano, and
Yes.
that is actually a unique puzzle solution for getting the blue jewel here, which you have to get 2 jewels at the beginning to put into this moose head that Chris is running up to.
We have to go.
And if you don't play as anyone other than Cindy, you kind of have to go through like 2 extra rooms, pull a cord, run back out, go back into that room, and then you can get the jewel. But if you play as Cindy, she can play the piano, and there is a mechanism in the piano that lowers the jewel, so someone that could actually play the piano in that piece,
What are you doing?
yeah, you can just go and play it and get the jewel way faster that way. Also, one of the more strange things that happened, because this run was actually a very good run, I haven't mentioned it, but this has been a very good run so far, despite some of the mistakes that happened. That was the first time ever that a zombie ever went up the stairs instead of paying attention to Chris. So that kind of gave us some foreboding vibes as we kept going in, because this game has a cruel tendency to just suddenly 180 you, especially if your run is going very well. You could kind of think of it as difficulty adjustment. It's not really that, but it's just the RNG really has a great knack of timing for making things worse on you. And unfortunately for this scenario, spoiler alert, there is something that makes us lose literally a minute or 2 of time just because of an item we cannot grab early on. So we will get into that very soon, but right now I'm going to be doing a little more enemy manipulation throughout the staircase. This staircase, for some reason, you can manipulate the spider here if you go on the right hand side or the left hand side in my perspective, and get him to jump there. Easily dodges it, and you can just keep moving on. If you just go down normally, you will get knocked out. You will get knocked down by the spider. But there we go. I took my time there because I heard the other spider was about to jump there. And oh yeah, those are spiders. You'll never see him again. Anyways, we're gonna keep going here, and this is one of the locations where the assault rifle would be. We actually need the rifle for a door coming up, but unfortunately, we didn't get the best RNG for it, which is in this room. That tram car we just passed usually houses the rifle. It wasn't there. Which, by the way, if you're wondering how we know this, we are using an SRT throughout this run. So if you just see us just suddenly keep going while I'm explaining something, that's the reason why. And also here, this is the other location you can have the rifle in. Unfortunately, it's not there. So we have no rifle, which is not good news for me. So we instantly lose out on a minute or 2 just because of this.
Yes.
and we have to actually take a little bit of a detour in regards to my routing here. So I mentioned there's a door that you shoot open, and I'm gonna grab this fast here for the sake of safety's sake. There is a door coming up right here that you shoot open with the rifle. Now, because I don't have the rifle and Chris just went into the room, the cutscene initiates. Since I don't have the rifle, I have to go through the ventilation shaft here, and unfortunately in the ventilation shaft there is a giant wasp, which is literally, that's what they're called, a giant wasp. It is straight up what it is. It's a wasp, and the wasp in this game kind of suck. They're a little annoying. They put you in bleed if they hit you with their stinger, just like that. And since I am on a ledge, thankfully since there's only one of them, this doesn't really apply here, but since I am on a ledge, if I get knocked down here and he somehow luckily hits me again, I will die here. So there is already a great deal of risk going through this, but since there's only actually one giant wasp here instead of two, they actually don't have enough time to attack you the second time. So if you just, you know, spam circle and just climb up very quickly, you should not be able to die here. But fortunately he did put me into poison, so I kind of have to be wary of that. Alright, we're gonna go through here now into the storeroom, and since he activated the cutscene before I left that room, there's only one zombie in here, thankfully. We're gonna go push open this locker. Oh, actually, I forgot. There's a zombie that busts through the room. So since I don't have to actually open it, I just have to go through the door instead. Now, here's the second power puzzle of the game. It's a little more complex in regards to the solutions, but no problem. We got it done in time. Normally, if you're playing casually and you're in that room after that cutscene plays out,
Help me, please.
it becomes very scary, this section. And this is actually where I get to mention Murder Hall in its full form. This hallway that I ran to didn't really seem that bad at first, but this is known as Murder Hall and Decisions. This is the worst hallway to go through in this game because of the fact that after that cutscene, when Chris goes to the courtyard the first time, 5 zombies spawn in this hallway, and it can very easily mess you up from getting out of here because the only way out of here was that ladder that I just climbed up. And if you cannot bait them into going away from you, or they just stick around that spot, it's basically like you cannot get out of there unless you either leave the room or you take care of the zombies. It's easily scary, that sort of thing. But okay, I didn't even get to mention it at all. Like, the Decisions is the most action-packed one in regards to whoever is running the Cindy route. Same thing with Rita too, but Rita actually has a bit of downtime here because you kind of have to climb a pipe to get a setup going for a cutscene. And meanwhile this is going on, I'm actually stuck in an elevator with bees for the next minute or two. So we'll talk about Rita's segment for a moment. Rita just has to climb some pipes, and interestingly enough, we found out that for some reason, female characters climb pipes faster than male characters. So we actually ended up changing from Carl, I believe, to Rita because of that fact alone. So it actually does save some time, just, you know, picking Rita instead. And now we're gonna have a cutscene initiate with the Hunter Gammas. If you don't remember how they look like, hey look, there's the Hunter Gamma right there. Oh man, I prefer these over the RE3 reimagined counterpart, but okay, but let's not get off topic here. Since we don't have the rifle, Chris is actually going to take a detour right now and grab the grenade launcher, because that's actually the other thing that we have to use if we don't have the assault rifle. We are going to be using that for a really cool strat that I ended up pulling off here perfectly later. But we have to use it for a strat later. That's what I'll say for now. Now, Chris is going to go and run and get a door unlocked for me while I have to survive the bees here. And luckily enough, I didn't get knocked over by the bees here. So I could just leave, and it actually takes you back out to the courtyard, the way that we leave this area. So a bit of an implication for what will happen later if those bees were to get out. now I'm gonna run down and head down the same way Chris went, but I'm not actually gonna cross the piping.
What?
Rita just kind of has to run against time here before
Good.
Cindy gets down to this area. But since I didn't have the rifle, I had to take more time. And usually with the grenade launcher, it doesn't take that long to get it anyways.
Help me!
Chris should be able to get there on
What should I
time.
do?
But normally this part, decisions as a scenario itself is the most it's the most tightly routed scenario for 2 players here. Because after all of this, even with the rifle in tow, there is literally the likelihood that everything went super well on both ends, and both players end up meeting up here. Now, we actually almost ended up meeting up. Like it was almost, actually it was perfect because I just got into the room that Chris unlocked the door at the other end for. And now I can just keep moving in without having to wait. That was perfectly done. And it's even though it's kind of unfortunate, but it's also fortunate too. It's thanks to those, you know, having to take the detour for the grenade launcher and stuff like that.
Oh my god.
Well, more just the rifle, honestly. But Chris got the door unlocked, and now I got to grab the final piece of the puzzle for the daylight here, which is the
No.
I don't think it's I don't believe it's the P base, if I remember correctly.
Help.
But unfortunately, there are bottles here that you can use, but the thing about the bottles is that they're destroyed, and it'll just leak out the fluid. So we just take this sealed reagent case, we put it here. I tell Chris when to go, just so that he gets it, and we got the P base.
Help
Oh,
me,
it is the P
please.
base. It is the P base. And now we're just gonna run all the way
this
back
can't
up
be.
to the 3rd floor of the university, because now we need to manufacture the daylight.
No.
And
This can't be.
at this
Help me,
point,
please.
there's gotta be some curiosity about the daylight, because it's never really mentioned in RE2 or anything. But daylight is actually the cure for the T virus. It wipes all traces of the toxin in your body and makes you immune to it.
No.
Which,
This
I mean,
can't
that
be.
makes sense. It's supposed to be a cure.
Help.
But
Did you
there
find
is
anything new?
actually endings tied to whether or not you take the daylight. There are 3 possible endings
Hello
you can
there.
get. Well, 4 actually, depending on who
Find
you're
anything?
playing as. The first ending has you taking the daylight, but you do not take a
Watch out.
spare with you, so that
No.
you know
This
an
can't
actual
be.
mass manufactured antidote can be made for it. And the T virus can be the thing of the past without much worry. If you do not
What's
take the
wrong?
daylight, it pretty much boils down
Help me,
to
please.
it pretty much boils down to just society not really learning
you find it?
from the Raccoon City outbreak, and more bioterrorism events happening in the process
Help me,
because of it.
please.
If you don't take the daylight at all, and it's not a pairing ending, you will become a zombie as you are escaping, and you kind of bring an unfortunate demise in regards to your escape. Now, the pairing endings are only for certain characters. You have George and Cindy with one, Yoko and
Just
Alyssa
do
for
it.
another, which that one's
have to
also
go.
more of, like, each of them have their
have
own
to
like
go.
lore bits to them
have
that
to
either
go.
brings in more
We
character
have to
development
go. We
or
have to go.
or actually
We
more
have
to
to
the
go.
story, if you want to think
We
of
have
it that
to
way.
go. What?
There's also one Mark
No.
and David, which that one's really cool. It literally has them rolling up in a tank and just killing a whole bunch of zombies before the city explodes. And then there's also one with
Do it.
Jim and Kevin, if I remember correctly.
What should I do?
But now that things are finally heating up here, and we're finally on the the timer, where something blows up, of course, in a Resident Evil game. That guy that was just there before Nikolai, suddenly appeared. Which, by the way, Nikolai is around. the man that you were talking to, he was also in the beginning scenario, the beginning of the scenario too, in that CG opening. He's actually the
Thank you
one of
so
the
much. Thank
members
you
of
so
Umbrella
much.
that
Thank
actually helped
you.
manufacture
Thank
the
you.
tire that's running around right now.
Thank you so
You don't
much.
really see it on my end, but I didn't even mention the tire on
Thank
Chris's end
you.
because I was just so
Thank
busy
you.
talking about my routing. But
Thanks.
yeah, like that's just how much there is in DD. There's just so much going on. Looking at both perspectives is really hard to do. But there is a tyrant that runs around in this scenario,
Thanks.
and
Thank you so
the
much.
we're not gonna see it's not gonna be the last of them. Still, we're gonna see of them.
Thanks.
He actually does determine whether or not the run will live or die later on. So he's still got some form of he's still got some grasp on the run before we can actually say that the run is, smooth sailing at that point. But meanwhile, like Chris is just waiting. We're doing the same thing here. We're just trying to have one person have the fewest amount of loading screens so that their timer is faster than the other. So I'm the one that went back to grab the daylight, and I'm just filling up my inventory so that not only can I actually
Thank you
give myself
so
the
much.
daylight, but also give Chris his stuff for the daylight.
Oh my god.
But now the one mechanic of the game is actually
Help me,
gone, the
please.
infection rate. I did not even mention it whatsoever, the infection rate. But every character has a speed in regards to how fast they get infected.
Just hey there.
There's actually one character, funny enough, one NPC character that literally, even not being attacked, they have 40 minutes before they become a zombie, which that is the mechanic. If your virus gauge, which usually pops up in the bottom left or right corner, goes up to 100%, you will become a zombie, and your game at that point is over. The only thing you could really do at that point is just bust
What's
open
wrong?
doors for people, or just kill your friends if you really wanted to.
Please help.
But at that point, your game is over. You cannot be saved, nothing like that. You are just a zombie. But you never really see that happen. But also because we have the daylight and we took it, it actually
come any
gets
closer.
rid of the infection gauge because we've been cured of the T-virus. So there's no need to worry about it anymore. We're just gonna keep on running. It's pretty straightforward here at this point. We're just literally running outside and we're gonna be waiting for a few minutes. So I guess I could take the moment to talk more about Outbreak as a game. Outbreak was the culmination of a lot of the, I'm gonna say quote-unquote the old guard of Resident Evil. Developers such as Shinji Mikami and
Over there.
like some of the other developers from the original RE games put some of their, they actually worked on this. At first, Outbreak, in its concept stages, when they were first, getting an idea going for it,
Do it.
it was actually more of a survival-based game where you're just, in a room with friends and you're just surviving for as long as you can against zombies. It ended up becoming more than that, though, and they wanted to actually make a sort of classic Resident Evil game, but co-op. So you have yourself a 4-player co-op game with quote-unquote 20 scenarios, well, until, the content got cut out. And they will be introduced as expansions, sort of. And they were actually going to experiment with the hard drive and the online capabilities of the PS2 to see if they could actually, feed the content, feed File 2 as an expansion and whatnot. But the technology at the time wasn't that great, so they kind of ended up having to separate the games out, the scenarios out into separate games. So this is File 1, and you have File 2. File 2 definitely has a lot more gameplay refinements, but you do lose out a lot on character development, and also File 1 just has a lot of cut content compared to File 2. And also, for some reason, they swap out the voices in File 2, and they're much more simplistic in regards to how characters respond to each other. In this game, there are many rooms
What's wrong?
in which it is coded depending on what character you're playing as to whether or not you can have a conversation with that character that pertains to those characters only.
Oh my god. What?
It's really interesting. Like there's a lot of voice files also with this game that are just not even there entirely. Whether it be variations of the same, phrases like saying yes or calling for help and whatnot. But there's also some bits of dialogue here and there that don't actually get put into the game.
What the hell?
It's insane.
This is what I needed. What the hell?
But we're actually coming up close to the end here. We have about a minute left here. What's going to happen
Just
soon
do it. Oh my
is
God.
we're going to be running into Tyrant one more time.
No.
But before we do that, we are going to be doing
Hey,
a strat that is actually pretty risky compared to just having the assault rifle, which
why
this is
now?
where the difference is between having the assault rifle and the grenade launcher come into play. Not only does one of us run slower still, which is me, Rita actually runs a bit faster than Cindy does. If I had the rifle, I would be able to run almost as fast, if not a little faster than Rita. But we have the grenade launcher, and there's going to be a shed we have to open up to get a rocket launcher for the boss fight. During this run, I decided to just go with the strat just to show it off, but it is a pretty hard strat to pull off. It was just fortunate that I was able to remember the positioning and how to do it. But it's going to take a grenade launcher and 4 grenade launcher rounds, which we should have more than enough of to get it done. It's just don't miss too much,
Thank you so
So now the cutscene begins. The university blows up. Thanks, Nikolai, for blowing it up. And because of that, the bees actually get out.
Please help. Don't
So
give up.
it's time to run.
Help me, please.
We're just gonna try to dodge these bees and get the heck out of here.
Please.
And now we're heading into one of the strangest areas of the game. And what I mean by that, I mean one of them. Because for some reason, the ad-libbing system kind of bugs out here. And for some reason, the characters just stick to one ad-lib line for a while. Like, it'll just stick to one line, and then it will switch over. So there's kind of a little bit of that as we're running. But we're gonna come up on the strat right now. My positioning needs to be good right here. I need to be more towards the left here, and I believe, yeah, this is exactly how it should go here. I get up here, and I set myself up to aim. I point myself towards the locker, and we are hitting the locker right now. Okay, one more. Alright, and then there should be one more. Alright, and that's it. That was perfect, doing that strategy. And that makes it so that we could just run and grab the rocket launcher and not have to deal with Tyrant, because Tyrant here, we have to determine who's room master in the very beginning. And not only that, he is, well, he likes to be a jerk.
Thank you so much.
But
Thank you.
fortunately, even though we had a little time to determine who was room master, he was pretty much consistent with both of us to the point where we could just make the call and just shoot without much worry. But we finally did it. We're finally done. Actually, we're not done. We need to defeat Tyrant one more time. But because this is the speedrun, we're actually not going to just, unload on him. We actually have a capsule shooter here, which this is where the daylight comes into play, having an extra one. You want to have an extra one so that you can just immediately take care of him right here. And that's it. That was Decisions. And that was the entirety of Outbreak File 1. I hope I was able to go through everything, because I was flying by the seat of my pants here, like just commentating over this. So I'm trying to commentate as I'm watching the run, but I hope I was able to give enough information about the run and how things were. I would like to talk more about Rita's route in the DD run, because I was only talking about Cindy, but it's just a lot of running through rooms and just getting past things. So with that said, that's gonna be it. I hope you guys enjoyed this speedrun, and I hope to see you guys soon. You guys have a great day and stay classy.